The final criteria that must be met is sustainability, which we can say that we've met when we know with confidence that using an armed escort is not going to jeopardize the ability to operate in the future. For example, we might think it's perfectly okay to use an armed escort if we're going into an area that's been recently cleared in a military operation. But what about when you intend to go back there and provide assistance to the population in need? How likely is it going to be that you're being perceived as impartial by that community? So we can't just think about the here and now, but we have to think about the long term. And the best way to do that, as articulated in the guidelines, is to use a stakeholder analysis to be able to identify the possible negative consequences of using an escort and be able to mitigate them going forward. This section also briefly talks about the issue that arises when you pay for armed escorts, which is discussed more in detail when you get to the Annex D of this document, but here they point it out because it does relate to sustainability. And the point they make is this: when considering whether or not it's appropriate, practical, or ethical to pay for the armed escort, think about what may happen if you run out of funds or are suddenly, for some reason, no longer able to pay for the armed escort service. If that does happen, are you going to lose your access? This is just some food for thought. So to recap, there are 4 criteria that you have to meet in order to justify the use of armed escorts. The first is humanitarian need and program criticality, which means that if you don't go, there's going to be unacceptable human suffering and it's worth the risk. Number 2 is responsible authorities, meaning that the authorities are essentially imposing the use of armed escorts on you. Number 3 is safety and security, meaning that you're confident that these armed escorts are actually going to make you safer and you checked with everyone else. And number 4, sustainability. You know that using armed escorts is not going to cause you bigger problems in the long term. Now, the guidelines do acknowledge that there are certain occasions that are not going to meet all 4 criteria. And in these circumstances, the utmost priority must be given to balancing security risks with program criticality. And in all cases, you have to go through a thorough security risk assessment to make your decision. You have to look at the threats, the vulnerabilities, the risk. You have to analyze the relevant stakeholders, look at the risk profile of the individual staff members and the individual programs, and also the operational requirements for the given movement or activity.